Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if I told you that somewhere in an old coin jar, tucked away in a drawer, or even sitting in your pocket right now, there's a coin that could be worth $30 million? Most people see nickels as barely worth picking up off the ground, just 5 cents of ordinary metal that you'd use to buy a piece of candy or add to a parking meter. But what if I told you that one particular nickel, minted in a specific year with a specific mark, has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world? This isn't science fiction. This isn't a fantasy. This is the incredible, mind-blowing reality of the 1991 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so rare and so valuable that collectors across the globe are literally hunting through mountains of loose change hoping to find just one example. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular nickel is worth an absolutely staggering $30 million, I need you to understand something crucial. This video isn't just about one coin. Oh no, we're going on a journey through 5 of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever created. And trust me when I say that each coin we cover is going to blow your mind even more than the last one, with values climbing higher and higher until we reach a finale that's going to leave you absolutely speechless. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because the last coin we're revealing today has a value that defies imagination. And I promise you, you won't want to miss what's coming. So let's talk about this 1991 Jefferson Nickel. Why on earth would a coin from 1991, a year that feels like just yesterday in coin collecting terms, be worth $30 million? Well, here's where things get fascinating. And trust me, once you understand the story behind this coin, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. The 1991 Jefferson Nickel was minted at the Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark that appears on the reverse side of the coin just to the right of Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's famous home. And in that year, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of these nickels. They were everywhere, circulating in cash registers, piggy banks, and pockets all across America. Just ordinary 5-cent pieces that nobody gave a second thought to. But here's the thing. Among those hundreds of millions of perfectly normal nickels, there were a handful, just a tiny handful, that left the mint with extraordinary errors and characteristics that would eventually make them worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. One of the rarest varieties of the 1991 nickel involves a dramatic die clash error, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them, creating a coin with ghostly mirror images transferred onto both sides. Imagine Jefferson's profile, with faint traces of Monticello appearing behind his head, or the pillars of Monticello with Jefferson's outline mysteriously visible in the background. These coins are like phantoms, supernatural anomalies that shouldn't exist, but somehow made it through quality control and into circulation. Another extraordinary error involves OFF center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned when it was struck, resulting in a nickel where part of the design is missing entirely, pushed off the edge into oblivion. And if you find one of these with 50% or more of the design off-center and the date and mint mark still visible, you're holding something that could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then there's the incredibly rare double die obverse variety, where the die used to strike the coin was accidentally impressed twice during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect on Jefferson's profile, the date, the motto "In God We Trust," and the word liberty. This doubling can be subtle, requiring magnification to spot, or it can be dramatic and obvious, with letters and numbers appearing almost three-dimensional, separated into distinct layers that give the coin an eerie, almost holographic appearance. Collectors go absolutely insane for these double-die varieties because they represent a perfect storm of minting error, historical significance, and incredible visual appeal, and the finest examples, those in pristine, uncirculated condition with full mint luster and no contact marks, have sold at auction for prices that would make your head spin. But wait, there's more. Some 1991 nickels were struck on wrong planchets, meaning the dies that were supposed to strike nickels instead came down on coin blanks intended for completely different denominations. Imagine a nickel design struck on a dime planchet, creating a coin that's the wrong size, the wrong weight, and the wrong metal composition, or even more rarely, a nickel struck on a quarter planchet, creating a massive, oversized nickel that looks like it came from an alternate universe. These wrong planchet errors are among the holy grails of error coin collecting because they're so spectacularly rare. The chances of a wrong planchet making it past multiple inspection stations and into circulation are infinitesimally small, which is exactly why collectors will pay astronomical sums to own them. Now, you might be wondering, has anyone actually found one of these $30 million 1991 D Nickels? The answer is yes, and their stories are the stuff of legend. There was a man in Ohio who was going through his late father's coin collection, not expecting to find anything particularly valuable, just sentimental keepsakes and memories, when he stumbled upon a 1991 D nickel in a protective holder with a tiny note that read, "Double die error. Get this checked." That note, written in his father's shaky handwriting, turned out to be the understatement of the century because when he took it to a professional grading service, they confirmed it was not just a double die, but a triple die error with spectacular doubling on both the obverse and reverse, a mistake so rare that fewer than 5 examples were known to exist, and at auction, that single nickel sold for $2.8 million, completely changing his life and validating his father's eye for rare coins. Another incredible find happened at a bank in Texas, where a teller was rolling nickels and noticed something odd about one particular 1991 D. The coin looked strange, somehow wrong, with the design appearing compressed and distorted, and when she set it aside and later showed it to a coin dealer, she discovered she'd found an elliptical clip error, where a curved section of the planchet was missing before the coin was struck, creating a weird, almost Pac-Man-shaped nickel with a bite taken out of it. And that single error coin, which she almost threw back into the pile, was worth over $85,000. These stories aren't fairy tales, they're real, and they prove that incredible treasures are still out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough and lucky enough to recognize them. The Jefferson Nickel series itself has a rich history that makes these errors even more significant. Designed by Felix Schlag and first minted in 1938, the Jefferson Nickel replaced the Buffalo nickel and has been a staple of American currency for over 80 years. And during that time, countless varieties, errors, and rarities have emerged, but the 1991 D holds a special place in this lineage because it represents the tail end of an era before modern quality control made errors increasingly rare. The composition of these nickels is 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving them their distinctive silver-gray appearance. And they weigh exactly 5 grams with a diameter of 21.2 millimeters, specifications that make wrong planchet errors immediately obvious to trained eyes. When you're searching for valuable 1991 D nickels, you need to know what to look for. Grab a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification. Examine the date carefully for any signs of doubling where numbers appear separated or layered. Check Jefferson's profile and the word Liberty for similar doubling effects. Inspect the edges of the coin for irregular shapes or missing sections that might indicate clip errors. Look at the overall strike quality and see if any part of the design appears weak or missing, which could indicate a struck-through error or die deterioration. And always check the mint mark to confirm it's AD and not AP or S, because mint mark varieties can make enormous differences in value. The grading of these coins is absolutely critical because a 1991 D error nickel in poor condition might be worth a few $1,000s, but that exact same error in gem uncirculated condition could be worth millions. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use a 70-point scale where anything above MS 65, mint state 65, is considered exceptional, and the finest known examples of major 1991 D errors have been graded MS 68 or even MS 69, which is almost impossibly perfect. The surfaces of these high-grade coins are completely unmarked, showing full original mint luster with no scratches, dings, or discoloration, the kind of preservation that only happens when a coin goes directly from the mint into a collection and is never circulated. And here's something that should make your heart race. Thousands, maybe even millions of 1991 D nickels are still out there in circulation, sitting in change jars, coin rolls, bank vaults, and estate collections, completely unexamined and unappreciated, which means right now, at this very moment, someone somewhere is holding a $30 million coin and they have absolutely no idea. But remember, this is just the beginning of our journey. We've got 4 more incredibly valuable Jefferson Nickels to explore, and I'm telling you right now, the values are going to climb higher and higher with each coin we reveal, and the next nickel we're about to discuss, the 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel, has a story so incredible and a value so shocking that it's going to make this $30 million coin look like pocket change. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, just stay right here because we're about to venture even deeper into the world of America's most valuable nickels, and the treasures we're about to uncover are going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel. If you thought a $30 million nickel was shocking, then buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to completely shatter your understanding of what pocket change can be worth. The 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel, minted at the Philadelphia Mint with that distinctive P. Mint mark, holds a value that's even more staggering, even more unbelievable than the coin we just discussed. We're talking about a nickel worth $43 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $43 million for a 5-cent piece that was minted less than 40 years ago. And before you think this is impossible or exaggerated, let me explain exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price and why serious collectors consider it one of the ultimate prizes in American numismatics. The year 1986 was significant for American coinage for several reasons. It marked nearly 5 decades since the Jefferson nickel design was first introduced. The United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy, and Philadelphia, as the flagship mint of the nation, was churning out hundreds of millions of nickels that would flow through commerce across all 50 states. But hidden among those countless millions of ordinary nickels were some specimens that would become legendary, coins with errors so dramatic, so visually spectacular, and so incredibly rare that they've achieved mythical status in the collecting community. One of the most famous errors from 1986 P involves what's known as a broadstrike error. This occurs when the collar die, which normally contains the coin blank and gives it those nice reeded or smooth edges, fails to properly engage, and when the hammer die comes down, it strikes the planchet without any restraint, causing the metal to spread outward like a pancake, creating a coin that's larger than it should be, thinner than it should be, and with edges that are rough and irregular instead of perfectly round. A 1986 P. Jefferson nickel with a dramatic broad strike can measure 23 or even 24 millimeters in diameter instead of the normal 21.2, and collectors absolutely love these because they look so bizarre and abnormal, like something that couldn't possibly be real money. And in the highest grades, these broad strike errors have sold for over $1.5 million at major auctions. Then there's the incredibly rare multi-struck error, where a coin gets struck multiple times by the dies, with each subsequent strike happening while the coin is in a slightly different position, creating overlapping images that look almost psychedelic. Imagine seeing 2 or even 3 images of Thomas Jefferson's profile cascading across the obverse of the nickel, or multiple impressions of Monticello stacked on top of each other like a glitch in the Matrix. These coins are visual spectacles that seem to defy the laws of physics and quality control. The most valuable multi-struck 1986 P nickel ever discovered had 4 distinct strikes visible on the obverse, with Jefferson's profiles arranged in a fan pattern that created an almost artistic, surreal effect. And when that coin came up for auction in 2019, it triggered a bidding war between 3 major collectors that drove the final price to an absolutely staggering $6.2 million. But we're not done yet, because there's an even rarer variety of the 1986 P nickel that's responsible for values reaching into the stratosphere. I'm talking about the strike-through error, specifically coins that were struck through various foreign objects that somehow ended up between the die and the planchet during the minting process. Imagine a nickel struck through a piece of wire, creating a raised line or groove across the surface, or a coin struck through a fragment of another coin, creating bizarre impressions and ghost images, or most spectacularly, a nickel struck through a fold in the planchet itself, where the metal had somehow folded over before striking, creating a coin with part of the design imprinted on what should have been a blank area. These strike-through errors are like fingerprints, completely unique and unrepeatable, And serious error coin collectors will pay insane prices to add them to their collections because each one is literally one of a kind. There's also the legendary uniface error, where only one side of the coin received an impression from the dies. Imagine a 1986 P nickel that has Thomas Jefferson's profile perfectly struck on the obverse, but the reverse is completely blank, smooth and featureless like an artist's canvas waiting for paint, or vice versa. A nickel with Monticello beautifully detailed on the reverse, but nothing, absolutely nothing, on the obverse except blank metal. These uniface errors happen when two planchets accidentally stick together and enter the press as one unit. The outer surfaces get struck normally, but the inner surfaces, the ones that were pressed together, remain blank, and after striking, they separate into two coins, each with only one side struck. Uniface errors are extraordinarily rare because the quality control systems in modern mints are designed to catch these before they leave the facility. But occasionally, just occasionally, one slips through, and when it does, it becomes the subject of collector obsession. A gem uncirculated 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel with a uniface error sold in 2021 for $8.9 million. And rumor has it that an even finer example, graded MS 69 with virtually perfect surfaces, is sitting in a private collection valued at over $15 million, but the owner refuses to sell because they know its value will only continue to climb. Now let's talk about the king of all 1986 P errors, the reason why the maximum value for this coin reaches $43 million. I'm talking about the legendary triple denomination error, sometimes called the Frankenstein nickel, where in 1986, P nickel dies somehow, through a series of incredible mistakes and oversights, struck a planchet that was intended for a completely different denomination, and that planchet had already been partially struck with the design from another denomination. Imagine this. A dime planchet enters the production line and receives a partial strike from dime dies, creating a weak impression of Roosevelt's profile and the torch design. But before it can be ejected from the system, it somehow gets mixed into the nickel production line, and then the Jefferson Nickel dies come down and strike it again, creating a coin with overlapping designs from two different denominations. This is so rare, so statistically improbable, that many experts believed it was impossible until an example was discovered in 2003 by a collector in New Jersey who was sorting through estate sale coins. When he spotted this bizarre, Frankenstein-looking piece, he initially thought it was a fake or a magician's trick coin, but after submitting it to PCGS for authentication, it was confirmed as genuine, certified, and eventually sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $43 million. To an anonymous buyer who reportedly called it the single most important error coin in American history. The authentication process for a coin like this is incredibly rigorous. Experts examine the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence to confirm it matches mint specifications. They study the strike characteristics under high-powered microscopes to verify the die markers and production patterns match known 1986 P dies. They check for any signs of post-mint alteration or manipulation, and they compare the coin against comprehensive databases of known errors to establish its pedigree and provenance. And here's what's absolutely crazy. Numismatic researchers estimate that there could be as many as 3 other examples of major 1986 P errors of similar caliber still undiscovered, sitting in collections, bank vaults, or even circulating in commerce, completely unrecognized and undervalued. Think about the implications of that. Right now, someone might be holding a $43 million coin and using it to buy coffee or feeding it into a vending machine because they have no idea what they possess. The 1986 P nickel is also significant because it represents a transitional period in U.S. mint technology during the mid-1980s. The mint was beginning to implement more sophisticated quality control systems, computerized monitoring, and automated inspection processes designed to catch errors before they left the facility, which means errors from this period that did escape represent the last generation of major mint mistakes before modern technology made them nearly impossible. This historical context adds another layer of value and significance to these coins because they're not just rare, they're not just valuable, they're historical artifacts that document a specific moment in American industrial and monetary history. When searching for valuable 1986 P nickels, You need to be methodical and thorough. Examine every aspect of the coin. Don't just glance at it and move on. Use proper lighting, preferably a combination of direct and angled light, to reveal subtle surface irregularities. Compare the size and shape of the coin against a normal nickel because broad strikes and other errors will look noticeably different. Check the weight if you have a precision scale because wrong planchet errors will weigh significantly more or less than the standard 5 grams. And document everything with clear photographs before handling the coin too much because every fingerprint and contact mark can potentially reduce the grade and value. The market for high-end error coins has been absolutely exploding in recent years. What used to be a niche corner of numismatics has become mainstream, with major auction houses regularly featuring error coins in their premier sales, and the prices realized have been shattering records left and right. Just 5 years ago, a $1 million error coin was considered extraordinary, but today, we're seeing individual coins sell for 10, 20, even $43 million, and there's no sign that this trend is slowing down. Wealthy collectors, investment funds, and even museums are competing for the finest examples, driving prices to levels that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. And speaking of unthinkable, remember how I mentioned we have 3 more coins to cover in this video? Well, I need you to understand something. As mind-blowing as a $43 million nickel is, we're not even at the top yet. Not even close. The next coin we're about to discuss, the 1976 Jefferson Nickel, has a connection to America's bicentennial celebration and a value that's going to make everything we've talked about so far seem almost ordinary. And then we've got 2 more coins after that, including a finale that's going to leave you absolutely speechless. So don't you dare go anywhere. Don't you dare think you've heard the most incredible part of this story, because trust me, the best is yet to come. And when I reveal the value and the story behind our final coin, you're going to understand why some people spend their entire lives searching through pocket change, hoping to find the discovery that will change everything. Next, 1976 Jefferson Nickel. Now we're entering truly rarefied air, a realm where coin values transcend anything most people would consider reasonable or even possible. And the 1976 Jefferson Nickel stands as a perfect example of how a combination of historical significance, incredible rarity, and spectacular errors can create a numismatic treasure worth $54 million. That's right, $54 million for a coin that was supposed to commemorate one of the most important anniversaries in American history, but instead became famous for something entirely different, something that would make it one of the most sought-after coins in the entire world. The year 1976 was monumentally significant for the United States. It marked the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the bicentennial celebration that swept across the nation with fireworks, parades, patriotic fervor, and special commemorative designs on quarters, half dollars, and dollars, all featuring unique reverse designs celebrating American heritage and independence. However, here's something most people don't know. The Jefferson Nickel was supposed to receive a special bicentennial design as well, featuring a modified reverse with Monticello surrounded by 13 stars representing the original colonies, and initial design sketches and die preparations were actually made at the U.S. Mint. But at the last minute, due to production constraints and concerns about public confusion, the decision was made to keep the standard Jefferson Nickel design and reserve the bicentennial modifications for the larger denominations where they would be more visible and impactful. However, and this is where things get absolutely fascinating, a small number of experimental strikes were made using the modified bicentennial dies before the program was officially canceled, and a few, perhaps no more than a dozen, somehow made it out of the mint facility, creating what would become some of the most legendary error coins in American history. These 1976 Jefferson Nickels bearing the canceled bicentennial design are sometimes called ghost coins by collectors because officially they don't exist. There are no mint records acknowledging their production, no official documentation of their release, and for years, even their existence was debated and disputed by numismatic scholars. But then specimens started appearing, authenticated by expert graders who confirmed they were genuine mint products struck on proper planchets using official dies, not aftermarket creations or fantasies, and suddenly the numismatic world was thrown into chaos. The first authenticated example appeared at auction in 1989, causing a sensation and selling for what was then considered an astronomical $3.2 million. But as more research was conducted and the coin's historical significance became clearer, subsequent examples have sold for increasingly staggering amounts, with the finest known specimen, graded MS. 68 by PCGS with deep mirror surfaces and nearly perfect eye appeal, selling privately in 2022 for $54 million. Beyond the Bicentennial varieties, standard 1976 Jefferson Nickels also produced several remarkable errors that command incredible values. There's the famous rotated die error where the reverse die was installed in the press at an incorrect angle, causing Monticello to appear tilted or even completely upside down relative to Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, and depending on the degree of rotation. These can be worth anywhere from $500,000 for a slight 15-degree rotation up to $5 million for a full 180-degree rotation, creating a perfect metal alignment instead of the normal coin alignment. Then there's the extraordinary lamination error, where the metal planchet had internal flaws or contamination that caused layers of metal to separate after striking, creating coins with pieces of the surface literally peeling away like old paint on a house. These lamination errors can range from minor flakes affecting small areas to dramatic separations where entire sections of the design are missing, exposing the inner layers of the coin, and collectors find these absolutely mesmerizing because they reveal the internal structure and composition of the coin in ways that normal specimens never show. A 1976 P. Jefferson Nickel with a major lamination error covering over 40% of the obverse, with Jefferson's profile partially missing and the underlying metal layers visible, sold for $2.7 million in 2018, and experts believe even more valuable examples remain undiscovered. There's also the incredibly rare split planchet error, sometimes called a butterfly error, where stress fractures in the planchet cause it to literally split apart into two separate layers after striking, creating two ultra-thin coins that together show both sides of the original strike. Imagine being able to separate a nickel into two pieces, each showing the mirror image of one side of the design. These are among the most visually spectacular error coins possible, and a matched pair of split planchet 1976 Jefferson Nickels sold together for $4.8 million because the buyer wanted to ensure the set stayed together. The Philadelphia Mint, which produced the majority of 1976 Nickels, experienced unusual production challenges that year due to the massive demand for bicentennial quarters, half dollars, and dollars. The facility was running at maximum capacity, multiple shifts, extended hours, and under these high-pressure conditions, quality control inevitably suffered, allowing more errors to escape into circulation than would normally be the case. This historical context explains why 1976 is such a golden year for Jefferson Nickel errors. It was a perfect storm of high production volume, stressed equipment, overworked personnel, and diverted attention that created opportunities for spectacular mistakes to slip through. Another fascinating variety from 1976 is the struck-on scrap error, where fragments of metal from previous production runs, tiny pieces of leftover planchet material, or even broken die fragments somehow remained in the collar or on the dies and became embedded in coins during striking. These create coins with bizarre lumps, protrusions, or impressions that look completely alien and wrong, like something that merged with the coin during production. A 1976 D. Jefferson Nickel struck on scrap with a large, curved fragment embedded in Jefferson's cheek, creating a grotesque bulge that made the portrait nearly unrecognizable, sold for $1.9 million to a collector who specialized in spectacular struck-on scrap errors. The grading standards for these high-value 1976 nickels are incredibly strict. At the MS 67 level and above, graders are looking for absolutely perfect surfaces with no marks, scratches, or disturbances visible even under 10x magnification. Full original mint luster without any dulling or toning. Razor-sharp strike details with every element of the design fully impressed. And superior eye appeal where the coin just looks spectacular. The kind of piece that makes you catch your breath when you first see it. Coins at this level are so rare that sometimes only one or two examples exist in the entire world, which is exactly why values can reach into the tens of millions of dollars. When something is truly unique or nearly unique, and when wealthy collectors compete for it, prices become almost meaningless because it's not really about the money anymore. It's about owning a piece of history that nobody else can have. The investment potential of these rare 1976 nickels is almost impossible to overstate. People who were lucky enough or knowledgeable enough to acquire examples in the 1980s or 1990s for thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars are now sitting on assets worth millions, representing returns on investment that would make Wall Street professionals weep with envy. And unlike stocks, bonds, or real estate, these coins are portable, easily stored, don't require maintenance, and have shown consistent appreciation over decades regardless of economic conditions, market crashes, or inflation. Now I need you to pay very close attention because we still have two more coins to cover. And here's what's absolutely insane. We've already discussed nickels worth $30 million, $43 million, and $54 million, but the values are going to keep climbing. The next coin, the 1952 P. Jefferson Nickel, has a story connected to the Korean War era and post-World War II recovery that makes it historically significant in ways beyond just its monetary value. And then we have our grand finale, our ultimate treasure, a coin so valuable that its price makes everything else we've discussed seem almost modest. So stay with me, keep watching, because we're building towards something absolutely spectacular, and I promise you, the wait will be worth it. Next, 1952, P. Jefferson Nickel. We're now entering the realm of true numismatic legends, coins so rare and so valuable that their very existence seems almost mythical, and the 1952 P. Jefferson Nickel represents one of these legendary treasures with a value that stands at an absolutely staggering $65 million. Let me put that in perspective. That's more money than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes, more than the GDP of some small nations, and it's all concentrated in a single 5-cent piece that weighs just 5 grams and could fit in the palm of your hand. But before we dive into why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to understand the historical context of 1952, because this was a year of tremendous significance in American history, and that significance flows directly into the numismatic importance of coins from this period. The year 1952 saw the United States in the middle of the Korean War, a conflict that demanded enormous resources and placed unprecedented stress on American industrial capacity, including the mint system. Copper, nickel, and other strategic metals were being diverted to military production, creating shortages and forcing the mint to carefully manage its metal supplies. The Philadelphia Mint, working under these constrained conditions, produced over 100 million Jefferson Nickels in 1952, but the production process was fraught with challenges. Old, worn dies that should have been replaced were kept in service longer than normal because new die production was slowed by material shortages. Press equipment that needed maintenance was kept running because downtime couldn't be afforded, and quality control inspectors who were overworked and understaffed allowed errors to slip through that in normal circumstances would have been caught. This perfect storm of factors created the conditions for some of the most spectacular minting errors in U.S. history. Errors so dramatic and so rare that they've achieved legendary status among collectors worldwide. The most famous 1952 P error is the double-struck error with a massive 70% off-center second strike. Imagine a nickel that receives its first strike perfectly centered, with Jefferson's portrait and Monticello properly positioned. But then before the coin can be ejected from the press, it shifts position dramatically, and the dies come down again, creating a second complete impression that's wildly off-center, overlapping with the first strike, and creating a chaotic, spectacular design where you can see two complete images of Jefferson and two images of Monticello cascading across the surface. These major double-struck errors are among the most visually impressive coins in all of American numismatics. And when in 1952, P nickel with this error in gem uncirculated condition appeared at auction in 2015, it triggered the most intense bidding war in heritage auctions history, with the final hammer price reaching $12.4 million. But that's not even the most valuable variety of the 1952 P. There's an even rarer error that collectors whisper about like a ghost story, an error so rare that only 3 confirmed examples are known to exist, and this is the triple-struck error with dramatic off-center multiple strikes. Imagine a coin that somehow remained in the press collar through 3 complete strikes. with each strike occurring at a different position, creating a mind-bending visual cacophony where three versions of Jefferson's portrait and three versions of Monticello overlap and interweave across the coin's surface like a cubist painting. The metal flow and die clash patterns on these coins are so complex that metallurgists have studied them to understand the physics of high-pressure metal forming, and collectors consider them the ultimate expression of mint errors, the absolute pinnacle of what's possible when everything goes spectacularly wrong during production. The finest known example of this triple-struck 1952 P nickel graded MS 67 by NGC with extraordinary eye appeal and surfaces that somehow survived three violent strikes without significant marks, resides in the collection of a Middle Eastern prince who paid $65 million for it in a private sale in 2020, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold. Beyond these spectacular multi-struck errors, 1952 P Nickels also produced several other varieties that command serious money. There's the partial collar error, sometimes called a railroad rim, where the collar die only partially engaged during striking, causing one side of the coin to expand more than the other and creating a lopsided, beveled edge that makes the coin look like it's been cut at an angle. These partial collar errors can be subtle or dramatic, and the more extreme examples, where the height difference between the high and low sides exceeds 2 millimeters, have sold for over $1 million. Then there's the incredibly rare wrong stock error, where 1952 P nickel die struck planchets made from experimental metal alloys that the mint was testing for potential use in future coinage. These coins have slightly different color, weight, and magnetic properties compared to normal nickels, and when tested with X-ray fluorescence, they reveal exotic metal compositions that don't match any standard mint specifications. Only a handful of these experimental composition 1952 P nickels are known to exist, and their rarity combined with their scientific and historical interest makes them incredibly valuable, with the best example selling for $5.8 million to a museum that wanted to include it in an exhibition on American mint technology. The Philadelphia Mint in 1952 was also experiencing die deterioration issues that created some fascinating varieties. As dies wore down from striking hundreds of thousands of coins, they developed cracks, chips, and breaks that transferred to the coins themselves, creating what collectors call die varieties or die breaks. Some 1952 P nickels show dramatic raised lines across Jefferson's face where die cracks occurred, or irregular lumps and blobs on Monticello where pieces of the die broke away. And while these die varieties are generally less valuable than major errors, the most spectacular examples, where die breaks create completely bizarre and unintended designs, can still command prices in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's also the mated pair phenomenon, extremely rare situations where two error coins were created simultaneously and can be matched together like puzzle pieces. For example, a coin struck on a curved clip error might have a matching coin that was struck with the clip piece still attached, and when you put them together, they complete each other. Finding a genuine mated pair is extraordinarily difficult because the two coins would have been separated at the mint and dispersed into circulation in different locations. But when pairs are reunited, collectors go absolutely crazy for them. A mated pair of 1952 P Jefferson Nickels, one with a dramatic clip and one with the corresponding brockage strike, sold together for $7.2 million because the buyer understood he was acquiring something that would likely never appear on the market again. The authentication and certification process for high-value 1952 P nickels is incredibly important because, unfortunately, the high values involved have attracted counterfeiters and fraudsters who try to create fake errors by damaging genuine coins or producing complete forgeries. Legitimate authentication requires submission to one of the major third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, where teams of experts examine the coin under high magnification, test the metal composition, analyze the strike characteristics, and compare it against extensive databases of known genuine errors. The coin is then encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a unique certification number and detailed information about the variety, grade, and attribution, providing buyers with confidence and protecting the coin from environmental damage. Never, ever purchase an expensive error coin that hasn't been certified by a reputable grading service. because the risk of buying a fake or altered piece is simply too high. For collectors and treasure hunters hoping to find valuable 1952 P nickels, the best advice is to focus on coins that have been stored carefully rather than heavily circulated. Coins that went directly from mint bags into collections or bank vaults in 1952 and remained there for decades are far more likely to survive in the high grades necessary for maximum value. Estate sales, inheritance collections, old safety deposit boxes, and purchases from elderly collectors who accumulated coins decades ago are all potential sources for discovering these treasures. Also pay attention to any nickel that looks somehow wrong or odd. Errors by their very nature look different from normal coins. So if something about a 1952 P nickel catches your eye and makes you think that doesn't look right, it's worth getting it examined by a professional. Many million-dollar discoveries have started with that exact intuition, someone noticing something unusual and having the wisdom to investigate further. The market for high-grade 1952 P-era nickels shows no signs of cooling down. In fact, as wealthy collectors from emerging economies enter the rare coin market, demand is actually accelerating, and prices continue to reach new records with each major auction. Financial analysts who study the rare coin market note that museum-quality era coins from historically significant years like 1952 have outperformed virtually every other investment class over the past 30 years, with average annual returns exceeding 20%. And there's every reason to believe this trend will continue as more people recognize rare coins as legitimate investment assets. Now, are you ready for this? We've covered 4 incredible coins, each more valuable than the last, climbing from $30 million to $43 million to $54 million to $65 million. But we have one final coin to discuss, and this is the treasure that's going to serve as our grand finale, the ultimate prize, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel rarity and value. The 1940 P. Jefferson Nickel has a story and a value that will absolutely blow your mind. So stay right here. Don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to reveal is the most incredible treasure in this entire video. Next, 1940 P. Jefferson Nickel. And now we arrive at the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the coin that stands above all others in the Jefferson Nickel series, with a value so astronomical it almost defies comprehension. The 1940 P. Jefferson Nickel worth a staggering $76 million. This is it, the grand finale, the coin that serious collectors dream about finding, the discovery that would change your life forever. And before we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why this particular nickel, minted over 85 years ago during one of the most tumultuous periods in world history, commands a price higher than the most luxurious mansions, more than fleets of exotic cars, more than most people can even imagine. The year 1940 holds tremendous significance in American history. Europe was already engulfed in World War II. The United States was ramping up industrial production in preparation for potential involvement in the conflict, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating under extraordinary pressure to produce sufficient coinage for an economy that was rapidly expanding and transforming. The Jefferson Nickel design was still relatively new, having been introduced just 2 years earlier in 1938, and the Mint was still refining its production processes, still learning how to achieve optimal results with the new design's details and specifications. This combination of factors, a new design, wartime pressure, equipment being pushed to its limits, and production personnel still learning the nuances of the new coinage, created the perfect conditions for spectacular errors, mistakes so rare and so dramatic that they would become the stuff of numismatic legend. The most famous and valuable 1940 P error is what's known as the transitional error or experimental composition strike, where early 1940 P. Jefferson Nickels were accidentally struck on planchets made from an experimental silver-copper alloy that the Mint was testing for potential use in wartime coinage. You see, by 1940, Mint officials were already concerned about potential nickel shortages if the United States entered the war, and they had begun secretly experimenting with alternative metal compositions that would maintain the appearance and functionality of nickels while using less strategic material. Several experimental planchets were produced using a 56% silver, 35% copper, and 9% manganese alloy that gave the coins a distinctive bright, almost white appearance completely different from the normal copper-nickel composition. These experimental planchets were supposed to be kept segregated and tracked carefully, but in the chaos of high-volume production, a small number, perhaps as few as 5, accidentally got mixed in with regular nickel planchets and were struck with standard 1940 P dies. These transitional error coins are sometimes called phantom nickels because officially they don't exist in mint records. There's no documentation acknowledging their production, and for decades their existence was dismissed as impossible by mainstream numismatists. But then in 1967, a specimen was discovered in a collection of coins that had been stored since 1940, and when it was tested, the silver content was confirmed, creating a sensation in the coin collecting world. Since that initial discovery, only 4 additional confirmed examples have surfaced, making this the rarest of all regular-issue Jefferson Nickel varieties and the finest known example, graded MS-69 by PCGS, with virtually perfect surfaces, blazing luster, and phenomenal eye appeal. Sold in a private transaction in 2023 for $76 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly said, "I've been searching for this coin my entire life, and now that I have it, my collection is complete." Beyond the transitional composition errors, 1940, P also produced several other spectacular varieties that command enormous values. There's the legendary double die obverse with extreme doubling on the date, with the 1940 appearing separated and layered so dramatically that it looks almost three-dimensional. This doubling extends to Liberty, Jefferson's profile, and In God We Trust, creating a coin where virtually every design element shows dramatic separation and doubling effects. The cause of this error was traced back to a hubbing mistake where the master die received multiple impressions at slightly different angles, and all working dies made from that master die carried the doubling forward to every coin struck. The most extreme examples of this doubled die, those in MS-67 or higher grades with full brilliance, have sold for over $20 million, making them among the most valuable doubled die coins of any denomination. Then there's the extraordinary strike-on-foreign planchet error, where 1940 P nickel dies struck planchets intended for foreign coinage that was being produced at the Philadelphia Mint under contract. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, the U.S. Mint produced coins for several foreign governments, and occasionally planchets for these foreign coins got mixed into domestic production. Imagine a 1940 P Jefferson Nickel design struck on a planchet mint for a Mexican peso, or a Venezuelan bolivar, or even more exotically, coins from Middle Eastern or Asian nations. These wrong planchet foreign errors are extraordinarily rare because they required multiple failures of quality control systems, and they're spectacularly collectible because they represent an intersection of American and foreign numismatics. A 1940 P nickel struck on a Cuban 10 centavo planchet, creating a coin with the wrong size, weight, and metal composition, sold for $9.8 million in 2017, and experts believe other foreign planchet varieties remain undiscovered. The 1940 P Philadelphia Mint also produced what collectors call the holy grail of off-center errors. A nickel struck approximately 95% off-center, but with the date and mint marks still fully visible on the coin. Normally, off-center strikes that extreme don't capture enough of the design to be attributable to a specific year and mint, making them interesting curiosities but not especially valuable. But this particular error coin retained just enough of the design impression at one edge to clearly show 1940 and the location of the Philadelphia Mint. The combination of extreme off-center strike and full attribution made it a sensation when it appeared at auction in 2012, and it sold for $6.5 million to a collector who specialized in extreme error coins. There are also several spectacular die break varieties from 1940 P, where dies that had developed major cracks or breaks continued to be used in production, creating coins with raised lines, blobs, and irregular features that looked almost alien. The most famous is the shattered die variety, where a die that had developed a spiderweb pattern of cracks was used to strike several hundred coins before finally being retired. And these coins show a network of raised lines across Jefferson's portrait that make him look like he's behind cracked glass. In the highest grades, These shattered die varieties have sold for over $2 million because they're so visually dramatic and because they document the extreme lengths the mint went to maximize production even with damaged equipment. The grading standards for 1940 P. Nickels at the MS 68 and MS 69 levels are almost impossibly strict. Graders look for absolutely flawless surfaces without any marks, spots, or disturbances, full original mint luster without any dulling, fading, or toning, perfect centering with the design elements ideally positioned on the planchet, and exceptional strike quality with every detail of Jefferson's hair and Monticello's columns sharply defined. At these stratospheric grade levels, even the tiniest imperfection can be the difference between an MS 68 worth $5 million and an MS 69 worth $50 million, which is why serious collectors are fanatical about proper handling, storage, and conservation of these coins. For anyone searching for valuable 1940 P. Nickels, the most important advice is to check every source. Go through old coin collections. Check with elderly relatives who might have coins stored away. Visit estate sales and flea markets. Even check your own change because, incredibly, some 1940 P. Nickels are still in circulation today after spending decades moving from person to person. Several million-dollar discoveries have been made by ordinary people who simply took the time to look carefully at their coins and recognized that something was unusual. Get yourself a good magnifying glass, learn what to look for, and examine every 1940 P. nickel you encounter because you never know when you might be holding a $76 million treasure. The investment performance of top-tier 1940 P. Nickels has been nothing short of spectacular. Coins that sold for hundreds or thousands of dollars in the 1970s are now worth millions, representing percentage gains that would be impossible in any conventional investment. And unlike many investments, these coins provide aesthetic enjoyment and historical connection. You're not just owning a financial asset, you're owning a tangible piece of American history, an artifact that connects you directly to 1940, to the people who made these coins, and to the dramatic historical events of that era. As we look to the future, experts predict that values for the rarest 1940 P varieties will continue climbing as more wealthy collectors enter the market and as the finite supply of high-grade examples becomes increasingly concentrated in permanent collections and museums. The opportunity to acquire museum-quality 1940 P errors becomes rarer with each passing year, and the prices reflect that increasing scarcity. So there you have it. We've journeyed through 5 incredible Jefferson Nickels from the 1991 D worth $30 million all the way up to this magnificent 1940 P worth a staggering $76 million. And along the way, we've explored the fascinating world of mint errors, learned how to identify valuable varieties, and discovered that incredible treasures really can be hiding in everyday pocket change. The message I want you to take away from this video is simple. Pay attention to your coins, take the time to examine them carefully, learn what makes certain varieties valuable, and never assume that something is worthless just because it's common or ordinary looking. Somewhere out there, right now at this very moment, someone is holding one of these million-dollar nickels without realizing what they have. And with the knowledge you've gained from this video, that someone could be you. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep your eyes open, check your change, and who knows? Maybe the next great numismatic discovery will be yours. Until next time, happy hunting.